Came to Ahmedabad. That's all the Gujarati I know. This is my first visit. That's all the Gujarati I know. This is my first time being here in Ahmedabad as well as Gujarat. So hopefully, Ankit, Nilesh, and all bring me back more so that I can learn more Gujarati. uh, yeah, I think the anchor list has already given enough about me, but I will just briefly talk about it. I wish I could also do like speakerless. Sorry. And probably talk behind the screens, right? That's much easier to do. In any case, I'm Prashanth. I'm co-founder and CTO of Stack and also AWS Serverless Hero. Today, I'm going to be talking about how my personal journey correlated with how the cloud journey went in the last decade or so, right? So I started as a quality engineer in one of the MNC as my career, right? Uh, at the same time, in parallel, I was a tech blogger. I was just, one day I discovered Blogger, Blogspot. How many of you know Blogspot.com here? Oh, you're my guys. Uh, right. So I started playing Blogspot.com just to jot down some points which I found interesting. And next thing I know was like I was getting decent traffic. This is back in 2007 kind of era, right? So, and I was getting like 500-600 visits a day. I'm like, oh, this is nice. I should probably give it more attention. So then I'm like, okay, my slides are going to have all the graphics you see are generated by Midjourney, and also you will see the prompts I used to generate those graphics. So just an interesting thing I thought of doing for this keynote. Anyway, so I was doing blogspot.com and then I discovered AdSense and then I put ads and then I started seeing some dollars accumulating in my account. So I'm like, okay, let me dig more in this, right? At this time, I was not a techie. I was just using whatever was there, Blogger, Blogspot. I did not know how to code, none of it, right? So then I discovered there's something called as WordPress, self-hosted WordPress. So I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting. Let me buy a domain and move my blog to WordPress. Then I found there is something called as cPanel. How many of you know cPanel? Oh, good, nice, very nice. Legends. cPanel is amazing, right? So I had this cPanel based WordPress hosting. I was able to do so much more compared to Blogger. I could place ads in a place where I wanted. Somebody will accidentally click and all of that, right? So a lot of plugins, themes, and everything. So that's kind of the first time I kind of went behind the scene of what is going on underneath a blogging platform, right? So WordPress was like so great. As you see in this picture, I was very excited. I can do so many things, so much more control. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Then what I did, cPanel was also great because you could just click here and there and there is this FileZilla, file manager, everything. You could do so many things. So I was like, why not do a reseller hosting, right? Because when I was signing up for my own cPanel hosting, I saw there was one more option called reseller. I was like, very interesting. Let me see what this is. So I signed up for that. And next thing I know, there are like 15, 20 people who are paying me for their hosting. Right? So cPanel hosting, I started a company, like a small company with a bunch of friends paying for their own WordPress hosting services and everything. So I was like minting money, right? So I was like, wow, this is so great. But it did not last long, obviously, because in reseller, how many of you know reseller hosting in cPanel, using cPanel? Awesome. So if you know that there is this one, it's basically shared hosting, right? You have limited resources shared across all the websites. So basically you have a reseller hosting. You can create as many instances as possible and hope that none of the websites that you are hosting has crazy traffic, right? So I started this reseller hosting, and then there are like one or two sites which were like eating up all the resources and making other sites down. And also once in a like every other day, I used to get an email or a call from the friend saying my site is down. What do I do and everything. So I figured out this is not something I wanted because it is taking too much time and the money I was making is not that great, right? So I was like, okay, this is not for me. So then I realized if it is shared hosting and resources are like so split, what can I do more, right? So I basically shut down this business. Then I still was not out of this rabbit hole I got into. I could have just been in Blogspot, right? I don't know why I got into this. Uh, then I was like, what can I do more? Uh, on Twitter at that time, somebody was talking about Linode. So I was like, what is this Linode? Then I realized, okay, I can have an instance and all these resources are just purely allocated to my own server and I can totally take advantage of it. Okay, cool. So I sign up for Linode, should be easy. Then it says pick your instance configuration and everything. I do all that, and then I hit launch, and this huge black terminal opens. I'm like, what do I do here? Because that is the first time I saw terminal. I was like, I thought something like cPanel would be here. I would click here and there and like get things going. But all I have is the terminal with some dot slash or something. I'm like, oh God, what do I do? That's when I kind of started getting into Linux and how to do Linux and everything. So like if you look at today, for example, DigitalOcean is amazing, right? They have crazy good documentation. You can follow step by step and easily get your site up and running. The documentation is so crisp. Back in the day, documentation was not so great, right? So, and somebody who had no idea about Linux, no kind of foundational knowledge about it, it was very, very hard for me. But one good thing about VPS, which is virtual machines, right? In Linode, I would do, okay, install Apache, install PHP, the LAMP stack, right? How many of you know LAMP? Okay, good. So for those who don't know, LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, right? So I used to do all that /www and all that, and trying to get my WordPress blog up and running. I would miss some step in between, and everything stops working, right? Nothing works. Then I'm like, oh, what do I do? Then I realized, oh, this is a virtual machine. So go click the delete button, start over, right? So I delete the instance, start over. And again, I do. And again, like I get to some level. And then again, I mess something up. So like this, I think probably did like 85 times. Yeah, some 80, 90 times I had to do this to get to a point where my blog is up and running, right? So it was very, very, very tedious. Then I'm like, what did I achieve? I should have been just happy with Blogspot. I did this WordPress, then reseller hosting, then Linode, and all of this rabbit hole I got into. The value I derived from all of this was nothing, right? Was it nothing? What did I get from all this? Yeah, right? The experience, the knowledge, right? That's the beauty of it, right? When you get into these rabbit holes, you may not be able to justify the amount of time you have put in, right? And the value you got out of it. It's not justifiable, right? I mean, you will be wondering who does all this to get one blog up and running, right? But I got this knowledge. Apart from knowledge, I'm like, I should have been just stuck to probably Blogspot or even like cPanel based WordPress. That was good enough, right? I should have stopped at that point, practically speaking, because that had all the bells and whistles, full customization, everything. So I did not stop, and I got deeper and deeper and deeper. So this was the major learning I had during my uh, blogging days, right? So after all of this, I quit my first job because I was not a graduate, right? So I'm a diploma, electronics and communication. So, like you all know, back in the day, corporates used to value a lot on certifications and certificates that you hold. So I was getting way less salary compared to somebody who would just join as a BE graduate, engineering graduate. So that was very disappointing. That was very, this thing. So I was like, if the system is not going to allow me to grow, I need to find other ways and probably carve out my own path. And what is better than becoming an entrepreneur, right? Probably you all, relate to this more than Bangaloreans. Because in Bangalore, the culture is all about, finish your engineering and get to a job, right? At least here you have more business mentality, starting a company and all of those kind of things. So culturally, thankfully, my family was supportive for all that. But culturally, if you say I'm going to be starting a business, you will be, are you sure, right? So I started my first startup, which is an e-commerce company, fashion e-commerce company, with another 4 founders. We raised $12 million, ran it for good 7 years. So that was that. So when we started, I did not know about AWS, right? Uh, there was this thing called a Rackspace. I don't know if it still exists. I'm not sure. Which is a VPS provider, right? So I got this Rackspace account, and so our e-commerce stack was Ruby on Rails, MySQL. So Rails was really, really great. Even today, I think it is, but I have not kept up with progress which it has had, right? Am I blocking the view by any chance?
No.
Yeah, good. Okay. I didn't realize. Okay. So Rails was really, really good, very accelerated development. They had this active record concept where DB migrations were also part of the code. You could, version control the database also and all that, right? So as a beginning, I had bought a Rackspace VPS, and I did not know much again about cloud and everything. So I just took one instance, put database in it, started running Rails in it. So everything was running out of one box, right? Then somebody was tweeting about AWS. I'm like, what is this AWS? So that's when I got into the another rabbit hole, right? Which I'm still stuck in. So what is this AWS? Then I signed up for an account. Then I'm like, oh, okay, they have EC2 and everything. So I moved from Rackspace to AWS, right? And while I did that, I separated the database and compute. That is something which came naturally to me. I did not know that was a pattern at that time. I was like, I could scale my app server independently and vertically scale my database server, right? So that's a pattern which came to me naturally. Then I realized that was a pattern everybody followed as well. So I got into EC2, ELB stack. I deployed our application, Rails application on EC2 ELB stack. Started using other parts. Like AWS, this is this thing, right? When you go for one thing and in another 6 months' time, you would have used like 15 other services without even knowing. Because a lot of people can relate, I guess. Yeah, so you start with one thing like EC2, and then S3, this, that, this. It just everything starts coming in. But anyway, it was great compared to what is the difference between VPS and cloud. Anybody want to answer that? Like, because we had VPS way before cloud, right? Like we had Rackspace, we had Linode, and all of these kind of things. What did AWS do differently? Yeah, so full ecosystem, that's one thing definitely. But what is the primary thing which AWS changed was, yeah,
More elastic than
more elastic, pay as you go, yeah, all good answers. But one primary thing,
removing one on-premise hosting.
Logical, I think they added services like they can manage things in cloud.
yes, so all good answers, no doubt. But one primary distinction was programmable infrastructure, right? So you could call an API and instance would come up, right? You did not need an interface. That was very powerful. People realized this is so powerful because conventionally, if the traffic is going up, going down, whatever, you have to be responsible for scaling your infrastructure, right? So AWS fundamentally changed that, right? So you could listen to a lot of different parameters from your own application, whether it is traffic, whether it is amount of consumption on your existing server. You can take a decision when to add another instance, right? So that was a major difference which AWS did. So it felt like playing God, right? Because I used to visualize this, like I'm like doing this and servers are coming up like that, right? So it's programmable, so you can actually codify everything and you just have a nice sleep. So this is something interesting. But yeah, that's at least when you look at the marketing stuff of AWS, that is what you imagine. But once you get deeper into the ecosystem, you realize a lot of gotchas, right? So the real world experience, especially with AWS, matters a lot more because what is portrayed, what you think it is, will differ once you start actually using the services. You get to learn a lot of gotchas. So what happened with style tag was we had EC2 ELB stack. It was in e-commerce, and we started hitting these limitations very soon, right? Not very soon, like in 3-4 years of time, we accumulated a lot of technical debt, like any other startup would. At the same time, we also found a lot of limitations around EC2 ELB stack as well. Like for example, ELB does not scale in burst environments. Did not. At least I don't know what is the case today. It's been a long time since I spun up an EC2 instance, thankfully. So in e-commerce, this marketing team comes up with this wild idea. So I will run this campaign, I'll get these many orders and all that. So they would do something like this in the middle of the night sometime, and suddenly there is a burst traffic, and those traffic is failing. All those people are not able to place orders. It's real business impact, right? So there were a lot of limitations, memory leaks. You could not just throw more servers at it. At one point of time, we were paying New Relic more than AWS, right? So how many of you know New Relic? Yeah. So it's an application. What is AP?
application
Performance. Thanks for filling in. Yeah. Application performance monitoring, right? It basically shows you what's going wrong where. And it's like $100 per instance you run, something like that, right? Per month. So it was very expensive. So did a lot of debugging, fixed a lot of memory leaks. Even then, we reached a point where we could not just throw more servers at it. In the middle of the night, if my phone chimes, I used to have anxiety. Because it could be one of those services which are down. People are not able to place orders, right? So that was very, very anxiety-driven things. You are responsible for a lot of things in an EC2 ELB stack, right? You are responsible for uptime, everything, right? If something goes down, it's not easy to recover. And like I said, typically, like any other startup, you will keep adding more and more features, and you lose track. You will accumulate a lot of technical debt. And since it's a monolith, you are not able to decouple things. Even if you want to touch the code, you're like really scared, right? for example, this I heard in Ola, it is running on like code base written by the OG team, right? And a lot of people are scared to touch that part of the code, right? Today, so they are like not touching it. Chal raha hai, chalne do, you know. So so Style Tag ran for 7 years, and I had all these learnings from that, doing EC2 ELB. Again, in sync with AWS journey, as they announced more and more services, we also adapted those. And during the last leg of Style Tag, we were exploring other ways of running infrastructure, like we were exploring Docker. Mesos came just before Kubernetes, if I'm not wrong. So all of these we were exploring. But something inside me, I was not able to resonate with this whole containers and everything. I also had a friend in Google, and he told me that by the time Kubernetes became open source, it was already like almost 10 years in use inside Google, right? So, or something like that, right? So I was like, this is too complex for the amount of things I'm getting, right? Again, relating back to my blogging rabbit hole, where I did all of that, but in reality, I only got so much, right? So this doesn't make sense for me personally. So that's when I also saw the announcement from AWS about Lambda. AWS already had a lot of services which can be called serverless, like S3 was there, SQS was there and all. But what was lacking was compute, right? Where do you run your application code? So when they announced Lambda, that was like that one Lego block you are missing for your completing your whatever that is. So I was very, very excited, and I was also about to start my another startup called Wheelsbox back in the day. It was into automobile space. So again, it was bootstrapped. I did not have a lot of money to spend on tech and everything. So we had like 4 people team, including myself, all freshers apart from me. We built this entire application 100% on serverless in about 8 months, right? And initially it was hard because coming from a monolith and a SQL background, for me to wrap my head around DynamoDB, NoSQL, data modeling, it was very hard. And also Rails and Node.js, right? So I would do something if I write a Ruby code, it goes line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, like that. And if I do the same thing with Node.js, it does not do that way. And it was very hard for me to initially wrap around that asynchronicity of JavaScript or Node.js. So it was very hard, but after initial 1 month of adjusting to new stack and everything, we were able to accelerate development. We did entire backend, front-end, React-based front-end, everything with just four people team, right? So this was so fascinating because nobody knew serverless, right? Today I'm like stoked to see so many people who are like serverless enthusiasts. I did not think this day would come so soon, right? And my friends were all like laughing at me because like, are you crazy? Why would you just use Lambda? And it was not something everybody believed in back in the day. And to do something which runs entirely on serverless, nobody had thought of back in the day. So when you learn something, you got to share, right? That at least my philosophy, because in Style Tag days, I have seen so many sleepless nights. We are going on a trip, had to pull over to fix a production issue, all of that. So I'm like, why can't everybody realize this? Why can't everybody go on serverless and come out of that taking too much to their own hands to manage, right? And if you do serverless, all of that headache is gone. You can purely focus on what matters, which is what value you are giving to your customers, right? So I gave a lot of talks in 2019. That's when I actually started public speaking also. It was very hard for me initially. I did community tour across India, so Bangalore, Pune, Chennai, Mumbai, everything. I could not come to Ahmedabad. I regret that now. It's a beautiful city. Then I also got an invitation from AWS to do Keynote in Beijing for the AWS Dev Day, right? So that was my biggest keynote so far. So I was doing all of that out of passion, right? I did not know there is something like this exists, and I would get recognized and all that. But one day I got this email, which was very surprising for me, which is basically saying you're an AWS serverless hero, right? So I believe in actions. I don't attach too much to the outcomes, right? So I want to put my best efforts, and outcome will follow. That's my belief. Also, here, if you see this photo, both of them worked with me in Style Tag. So whatever Style Tag journey I told, they were part of it. And Jeevan is India's first community hero. And Satya also, the other person is Satya Bhatt. He's also a great speaker. He also became a community hero. So we kind of shared that journey together in the Style Tag days. I'm very happy to have have worked with them, right? So this is the recognition. So what are the key takeaways from this talk, right? Foundational knowledge is very important, right? You don't want to just play at the abstraction level, right? It's always important to know what is going on underneath, right? So don't just use Lambda, API gateway, and everything. Learn how under the hood, how they function, how they work, what was the journey like, how was EC2, what problem this is solving. So get more deeper understanding of what you are using, right? And more importantly, you should know when to let go, right? So as engineers, we have this innate nature of getting into these rabbit holes and never being able to come out of them. It's very important for you to know, okay, I have understood enough, but where should I draw the line? Where do I stop? So for me, I have understood the whole journey of running EC2, this and everything, and I have understood the Kubernetes journey, containers journey, everything. And now I've made a conscious decision to play at the serverless level, right? I don't want any of that headache. I want to focus on what matters, and it's not worth my time to get into those rabbit holes, right? Because the value you get, the more deeper in the rabbit hole, the value starts diminishing, right? So that's something you need to always remember, and pick your battles, right? Always know what adds value to you and go after that, right? Yeah, I will leave everybody with this last thought. Do whatever resonates with you. Don't think of what world is telling you, right? I was one of those in 2018, when I started building on serverless. None of my friends believed in it. They all laughed at it. But here we are, right? So just do it. It's fine if sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, but you will always have the joy of being yourself and doing whatever mattered to you, right? With that, thank you, Ahmedabad.